Hello out there, this is Andreas. I'm doing InDesign and I'm doing it with the design class. Yeah. We are the entire class consists of 7 people. It's just so exciting. And this is how to make a design guide inside of InDesign using master pages and paragraph styles, character styles, and hence a lot of other things. Yeah, not henceforth. Okay, so the first thing to do is, of course, construct a document that will. Okay, I'll start talking normal instead. So the first thing we'll do is construct a document, which will be the design guide. So file new document, and I think just for the sake of this lesson, it's a good idea that you just construct it like I'm doing. I'm not saying that your design manual has to look like the one I'm constructing right here, but less things will go wrong if we do it the same way. So after this, if you decide, okay, I could actually use 50% of what I heard from Andreas's lesson, well, then you can make a new design manual and just do what you learned here in that new design manual. Because the design manual I'll be creating right here in front of you with you is going to be very generic in how it looks. So it's not going to look like something that's created by a totally professional designer who made every thought in the world about how it's supposed to look. It's just me, making bars. This goes here, that goes here, and blah, blah, blah. So making it appear really beautiful. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but making it appear as aesthetic and as you would like it for that company is up to you, I'm just showing you how to make a generic design guide. It's not going to look beautiful, but it will contain all the things that should be relevant for a design guide. Okay. So, we're on a screen, and we're most likely not going to print this design guide, except if it's because the teachers require us to bring it at evaluation day, right? So normally this design guide would always be viewed on screen. It's only in very few circumstances that this design guide would be viewed on print. So if that's the case, there's no reason to have an upright format, because an upright format is for reading while a landscape format is for screen, right? I hope that makes sense. So the only situation where I would use an upright format for screen is actually if it's a magazine, because that would be two portrait format pages next to each other, and that makes a landscape format. Yeah. Okay. So, sometimes to make it simple, because perhaps someone would like to print this at some point. What I actually do is I choose a print format. So I would choose A4, for example, and then of course in the orientation, I would switch it to be landscape. But just to make it simpler for us, I would not choose this under print, because that means I'm only working in SMUG colors. And that just limits myself from having a lot of colors that I could be using. So I would rather, go for web. And then inside of web, choose the A4 format. Because there's no reason to limit myself to SMUG if I'm always using my design manual on screen. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So I'll choose for the orientation to be landscape format. And it doesn't matter what your margins are. So I'll just write something. In general, I like big margins, so I'm just going to try typing 48 pixels. I can always change this later on inside of layout. So the layout menu. I think this seems fine. If I'm going to use this again and again in the future, I could save it as a preset, but I'm not going to do that. I'll just say, but we can name it already if we want. Let's call this design. guide. I think that's fine. Let's do it. Okay, so to make sure that everyone has the same things I have inside of these these panels over here, we're just gonna make sure that you have everything on your screen that I have on mine. So in Window, I'll choose Workspace. I'll choose Reset. Well, I'll choose the Essentials Classic first of all. I already have that chosen, so afterwards I'm gonna click Reset Essentials. And then I'm just gonna kill the CC libraries. You know, I pulled it out, clicked for it to be removed. And you see, there's really not a lot of stuff inside of this Essentials panel, so I'm gonna find some stuff. That's, yeah, okay. So I'll be using, we will be using paragraph styles and character styles, and you can locate that inside of styles. You can also locate it inside of the type menu. I'll just find the character styles, and then it should automatically find the paragraph styles as well. And I'll just put this over here in my panels. I'm just moving it over into the panels. Same goes for, so that was inside of styles. There's inside of InDesign, they have all of these fold out menus, fly out menus. And some of the ones that you'll be using a lot will be styles, it will be types and tables, and it will be object and layout. Those will be used a lot inside of InDesign throughout time. And I'll probably also be using object and layout. So I'll just choose align here, so we get align and pathfinder. I'll probably not be using that today. I'll just also find transform and put that in there. But these are always nice to have. They're normally all located up here in the content menu as well when we're working, but I just love having them so we can align objects next to each other, so we can, remove parts of one object from another object, so we can transform objects into having the right appearance. So I just love having those as well. So I'm just, don't worry, in the end we'll just have 1 minute so you can reconfigure yours to have the same things. Okay, so in Window also, I will go to types and tables and just make sure that I have character and paragraph. So I'll just find those two, character, paragraph, and just put those two together. I know it's a lot of panels. Damn it, I don't want character and paragraph to be in the same section as character styles and paragraph styles. And finally, I'll find two more. I'll find the one called effects, but because I always use that. It's rare that I have documents where I don't use effect, at least at some point. Mainly because of drop shadow. That's really a thing you often use, but also some like feather, outer glow, and so on. And finally, the one that it makes InDesign strong, text wrap. That's really a reason why I would never use Illustrator for bigger layouting assignments. That's because Illustrator does not have text wrap, which is to tell a picture that it needs to push text away when located next to the picture. So and that's really something I've been missing for a long time in Illustrator. It's so annoying if you have made a perfect layout and then you need to do some text editing in Illustrator that Illustrator does not have text wrap. Then you need to take it all over in InDesign to get that part. So that's just truly annoying. But I think it is a way that Adobe separates the layout program from the graphic program, right? It's just to annoy you that this panel is not in Illustrator. Okay, so I think the panels are ready now, so let's just go through them quickly again. We have pages, layers, links, stroke, color, swatches, character, paragraph, character styles, paragraph styles, align, pathfinder, transform, effects, and text wrap. And you know, I'm gonna use this throughout the entire semester. The rest of the semester, I'll be using these panels. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to Window, I'm gonna go to Workspace, and I'll choose to create a new workspace. This will be my own personal workspace. So whenever I have classes with Andreas, this will be the workspace that we're using. We can call this Workspace in Anno's classes. Yay. So, you know, you can also just call it something else. And this means that when I go back to Workspace, you'll be able to select it from up here at the top. You'll be able to select the workspaces that you created yourself. This can save you a lot of time, especially if you're switching between production types. For example, let's say you're working with printing and proofing in Regis classes, and then suddenly you have class with me where it's more about layouting. Then it's nice that you can switch quickly between those workspaces. Yes. And you know, a workspace does nothing to the file you're working in. It does absolutely nothing to the file. The file is still the same file. It's just how the program looks that's different. And I actually forgot to do one thing, which I always do, which is to, of course, take my tools and just click the expand button so it takes out 2 columns instead of 1. Okay. So that's preparing the workspace. Now we're ready to work on the file itself. Okay, so next thing is I'll actually just go straight up to my pages panel, and I'll go into my A master. And you know, this is not named A master anymore. From 2022, it's not called an A master anymore. It's called an A parent. I don't know if this is gender related, if master was too manly sounding, so they made it into a parent so it could also be a woman. I have no idea why they changed the name to be. Perhaps it's more political correct. Okay, enough about that. So how do I jump to my A master or my A parent? I'll have to get used to calling it that. How do I jump to that? I actually just double click it. And some of you will be like, okay, I'm double clicking, but nothing seems to happen. That's because your page 1 of your document looks identical to your A master, to your A parent. A parent? Okay. So the way I can just separate the two from each other is I'll just double click on my page 1 again, and I'll just draw something down here. I'll simply just draw anything. I'll draw a rectangle, just so I have something down here. And then you should be able to, both on the thumbnail of your page 1, you should be able to see that there's now a rectangle, but no rectangle on the A parent. If you are located on the A parent, you would instead be seeing a rectangle on that specific page. Okay, so now when I double click the A parent page up here, bam, you'll notice that it's actually not the same page. Okay, have you had any classes at all with regarding master pages? Okay, was it a quick walkthrough, or have you had a lot of time in master pages? Okay, you're not actually sure, so it's probably a good idea that I refresh your memory. Okay, so when I'm located on the A master, the A parent, anything I do will be directly transferred down to page 1, and actually also page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blah, blah, blah. So this is the template of how the design will look for each and every page in my document, if those pages in my document are based on the A parent. So that means if I draw, I'm just gonna do it simple again. I'm gonna draw a rectangle over here, and I'm gonna give it a RGB cyan color, and you'll notice that now page 1 on the small thumbnail, now page 1 will have a cyan rectangle. And if I'll just jump down to page 1 again, it's just by double clicking, bam. If I decide to create more pages now, create a new page in the page panel, bam, 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 bam. I've just created 5 more pages. You'll notice that all of them will have this, let's just say blue. I'll say blue instead of cyan. All of them will have this this blue rectangle. So they're actually a copy of the appearance of my A parent. So if I start moving this this rectangle on my A parent, it will also move on the other pages, right? So up here I'm creating the general design for my entire design guide. You can have a document that consists of several parents, some parents for some pages, some parent for other pages. Normally, it would be a specific parent for the content pages, the inside pages of the design manual, but it would be other parent pages for perhaps the front page, the table of content, the index, and so on, because they would look different than the general content of the design manual. So, okay, so I'm gonna delete this. You can also see if you're located on a parent page, if you go all the way down to your bottom of the screen, you'll be able to see which page you're located on next to the zoom options. So you can see here, am I located on page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or am I located on the A parent? And in this case, I'm located on the master page. Okay, so that being said, I will just continue working on my A parent because this will be where I'll be creating the general layout for my document. Okay, so I'll make sure that my document fills out the entire screen. So I'm going to click Command 0 so it fits to screen. Okay, so before doing this, I'll be sure that I have a proper layer order. Often when you're working on quick projects, you won't be considering how your layers would look. But in something as huge as a design manual, I would recommend, I'm not saying that your design manual has to be huge, but often a design manual, a design guide will be huge or consist of at least a lot of pages. So I'll have different layers. I'll create at least 4 different layers. So I just click to create new layers. And the first layer will be background. So I'll just rename that background. That's just by clicking the text gently. Then it will allow you to rename it. You can also just double click the layer and then you'll get a menu where you can rename it. This will be named text. And the reason why text will be below picture or graphics is because otherwise your text box will block the picture. So you'll need to move the text box in order to get hold of the picture. So it's just easier to have the pictures on top of the text because the text box fills out the entire area where you want to place the picture. So based on that, you will want to have your graphic located above the text layer. So I'm just gonna name this graphic. You could some would choose to have one layer called images and another called vectors, if they want to separate pixel graphic from, vector graphic. In general, I just call it graphic. Then it's both images and vector graphic. Depends on how much stuff you got in this file. If you want to have several layers depending on content. Okay, so the top layer is gonna be headers and footers. And this the reason why this needs to be above everything else is because you never want the page numbering to be hidden by any of the content inside of the design guide. You always want the section numbering and section titling to be present, so it's never hidden. So that's why I always want that to be above anything else. Okay, so, and let's actually just start out with creating a text box. So, but no, let's create the front page first, because actually we'll be working with different masters. So let's just actually create more masters than one. So before I start doing anything on these layers, I'll go to pages and I'll simply right-click on my A parent and I'll write new parent. We're getting a big family here. And I'll just click OK. So, and I can't see the new master I created, the new parent I created, but I can pull this down, I can pull this down so I'm able to see more of the different parents. I think it will take years before I start actually not having fun with calling them parents. Okay, your parent is apparently not your master. Okay. I think it's because they used to be called master pages and slave pages, because these pages, the document pages, were slave to the master. So now I think that they think that's not okay to call it anymore. So it's probably more logical to call it parent and child. Yeah. Okay, so let's say this A parent is actually just gonna be content pages. So I'm gonna right-click the A parent and I'm gonna choose parent options for a parent, A parent. And here I'm gonna rename it. I'm gonna rename it C in the prefix, and name is gonna be content. If you're Danish and prefer Danish, you could name it I and then indhold. But I'm not Danish. Well, I am Danish, but I'm speaking English right now. So C content, that's gonna be a C content page. Likewise, this B parent down here, I'm gonna rename that. Right click it, rename it. Parent options for B parent. And I could call this G generic, just a generic page. And I think I'll actually want the generic page to be above the C content, so I'm just gonna move it. I'm just doing that to show you can do it. Okay, so I'm actually, the C content is probably going to be based on how the generic look is going to be looking. Some of you would be like, should we create a front page, Andreas, or should we not in the masters, in the parents section? And if the front page is only going to be produced on one page, which it likely is, well, you don't actually need to use a master page to create it then. Because the point of making parent pages is that it's going to be reused on several pages throughout the document. You'll learn when we do editorial design in the next course assignment, you'll also learn that it's a good thing if you have monthly editions, that you have master pages where the layout is already made, so you just have to put new content in for each month, right? So a lot of the work is done for you. So I think we don't need a front page master, but in an editorial design situation, where you're creating magazines, then it would be logical to have a front page parent, because every month you would probably want that front page to appear almost the same, just with a different picture. And of course, different content as text on the front page. So if it's a monthly edition of something, you would also create a master, a parent of the front page. This is not a monthly edition. This is a design guide. It's going to be created once, and then it will be perhaps revised once per 5th year or something like that. So we're not going to need a front page. So instead of actually creating a front page, I'll make sure that my first page is not using anything from my parent pages. It's going to be unique. It's going to be its own master. So in order to do that, up here in the parent section, we have a parent called none. And if I drag the none page down onto the page 1, it's going to lose all its association with the parents. It's going to be an orphan. Yeah, sorry, I'm having a laugh up here. You wouldn't want to try being in my mind. Yeah, okay, super. So the reason and the way you can see that this is no longer connected to the different master parents up here is that it no longer has a letter in the thumbnail. So this is based on none. Whereas you can see 2, 3, 4, 5, page number 2, 3, 4, 5 are based on the C content. And perhaps I would like this to change. Perhaps I would like these page 2 to 6 to actually be based on G generic. So I could actually drag a G generic down onto page 2, onto page 3, onto page 4, and so on. I could also just make it easier for myself by actually selecting the pictures which we're talking about, right-clicking them, and simply choosing the apply parent to pages, and just simply choosing C content to pages 4 to 6, or to all pages. Oh, it was not, sorry, G parent, god damn it. G generic. Okay, so now all of them actually uses the same master page. I know it's a lot of talk right now and not that much action. I hope you can bear with me. Yes. I'm just making sure that everyone actually understands what we're doing. Okay, so let's make sure that we have the layers in order. So when I start creating anything, I will create that content on the layer which makes most sense to create it on. So let's create a header and a footer, and I'm just gonna make this very, very simple. It's gonna be the ugliest headers and footers in the. No, actually, I'll create an ugly footer and a beautiful header. Let's do it like that instead. So down here on my, I forgot to say something. I double clicked on my G generic, so I'm inside of the G generic now. Okay, and then I choose my rectangle tool and I simply just drag a rectangle down here at the bottom. It's a good idea to make sure that you have your smart guide switched on when creating objects. So I'll just go to View, Grids and Guides, and choose for it to snap to. Where is my smart guide? Ah, it's switched on. Oh. You know, I always forget to, it's like they become invisible for me when there's a check a marker next to it. So Smart Guides is right here. And it's Command U, both in Illustrator and InDesign, Smart Guides is Command U, so that's Control U on a PC. On Photoshop, if you click Command U, you'll get hue saturation image adjustment. Okay, but with the Smart Guide selected, it will actually make sure that it snaps to the margin, so it doesn't go outside the margin. It will snap to the page, the ending of the page, you know. The ending of the page, the document edge, god damn it. That was bad English. The end of the page. And okay, so I'll just give this a color. Perhaps it's gonna be red. Often I dislike these colors that are inside of the swatches panel in InDesign. You know, in Illustrator, there's just so many beautiful colors to choose between. In Illustrator, there's so many beautiful colors. In InDesign, we only have 6 colors. You know. Yeah, and then you'll be like, no, there's also black and white. Yeah, whatever. That's not really colors and blah, blah, blah. So if you need more colors, you can always go in and create your own. You can, what I normally, if I'm a company and I have some company colors already, what I would do, what would actually be to import these colors. So I would simply just load swatches from another InDesign document, from an InDesign template document from the company, and then it would have the right colors for my company. But in case and that's going to be an InDesign, you could load swatches by simply just loading another InDesign file. You could also do it by loading an assay file, which is an Adobe Swatch Exchange file. And you can actually save swatches inside of Illustrator and load them inside of InDesign. But not if the swatches you save in Illustrator contains gradients or patterns. Then InDesign will complain. It will though still bring the colors. Hello. It will still bring the colors inside of InDesign, but it will not import the gradients and the patterns. But it will still bring all the other colors in. So you can actually create colors. It goes for Photoshop as well. You can create colors in Photoshop and then load them inside of InDesign. If you save these swatches, somewhere on your computer. Yes, but that's not today's topic. I'm just telling you. So that makes it easier that you don't have to create colors again and again and again and again. Also, actually, you notice that there was something that I removed called CC libraries. That's actually also an exchange, a color exchange, typography exchange, so on exchange for different programs. So you can actually share colors and share typographies and so on, patterns, whatnot, in different programs, Adobe programs. but I hate it because it takes out so damn much space. So I always just begone foul CC libraries. But yeah, okay. So what I'm gonna do is I don't like these colors. I'm just gonna construct some new colors. So instead of loading new colors, I'm just gonna create a new color swatch. And let's say I want orange, because last time we had an exercise about a fruit company. I think it was 2 times ago. So I'm just gonna try making a color which is a bit orange-ish, because that makes me think of oranges and vitamins. Which company is it that you're making this visual identity for? What? Ryge og is. Nå, ryge og is. Jeg tænker også, rygning det er da ulovligt. Så, nej, ikke ulovligt, men ja, okay. Okay, ice company. So perhaps this could be one of the fruity colors from their ice. Okay, so I'm going to use this and that. You could also have renamed it. So it's actually, instead of being named with color value, it's named orange instead. Bam. So I'll be using this orange instead. So a quick way of getting colors inside of InDesign is also, if I want to use from bright orange to dark orange, I could have actually found those inside of Illustrator and just saved them as an assay file and just loaded them inside of InDesign. So I have like 20 orange variants inside of InDesign. So it's just a suggestion. It's a possibility. Okay, so down here, this is, I'm making sure that it goes on the proper layer, and right now I actually created this on the wrong layer. So I'm gonna move this rectangle up to the headers and footers. Likewise, I'll be sure to create on the footer, this is a footer, I'll create automatic page numbering. So I'll use my type tool, and right now, if I use that on top of this other object, I will start typing inside of that object. So instead, I'll just go into headers and footers. I'll lock the rectangle, and then I'll just drag a type, a text box on top, and perhaps I'll make this, you know, I hope everyone has Futura, because I'll just use Futura today for anything that's gonna be big. And I'll just write a number, 1, 2, 3, and make sure that it's big. And perhaps place it logically. I would, of course, not place it all the way at the top of my footer, but somewhere where there's some spacing before the number. I don't know. You could use align, transform, and so on to place it properly. You could use different ways of placing it correctly. That's not our focus now. It's to make automatic page numbering. So how do I make automatic page numbering? Well, if you have made a text box like me, and you've written a number inside of it, then you simply just have to select the number with your text tool, type tool, and then you go to type, you go to insert special character, you go to markers, and you choose current page number. Something weird is going to happen now. It's going to name itself G. And that's cool. That's cool. Because it will only be named G on the parent page, not on the document pages. Next off, this is gonna look really bad if the G is located right there. I need to somehow make it appear to be following the margin. So I'm gonna click Align to Right up here in the content menu. I'm gonna click it down inside of the paragraph menu, so it goes to the right instead. Doesn't matter if you use the paragraph panel or you use the paragraph options up here at the top. That's really up to you. Okay, so you'll be wondering, why is it saying G? Well, that's because it's the G parent. So this is located on the G parent, so it's just saying, okay, automatic numbering will be based on the G parent. Anything that's based on the G parent will have automatic numbering. That's actually just what it's saying. So if I go to page 1 now, it's gonna say nothing. But if I scroll down, whoops, okay. So, but if I scroll down, you'll notice that it will say 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And then I can say henceforth. Yes, I wanted to say that today. Okay. So, but some of you will be like, why is it actually saying page 2 first? Because I don't want it to count my front page. You know, some people are against the front page being counted as a page. So if you wanted to start counting first on page 2, then you could actually go to page 2 over here in the page panel. Simply go to page 2, right-click page 2, and then choose Numbering and Sections Options. You get there by right-clicking. Simply right-click on page 2 and choose Numbering and Sections. And here you can just choose, instead of automatic page numbering, you say Start Page Numbering at 1. And that's all you need to do. Then click OK, OK again, and then you'll notice that page 2 is named page 1. See, this is page 2 is now page 1. Okay, so is it working for all of you? I guess that's yes. Okay, so I've done a lot of talking right now, and we've actually only constructed the skeleton. But that's just to make sure that you actually understand what's going on. I think we should take a small break now, because it's very, it gets to the mind when you're just listening and trying to do the same thing. So copying my moves. So let's just take a small break, and after that we'll continue. We are continuing inside of InDesign. So far we've created a master page, and we've created automatic page numbering in the layer called headers and footers. Yes. Okay, so let's create a header as well. Notice that there's actually this lock on top of it on the G generic. This actually just means that it's from the master page. So if you go down to a normal page down here, it will be locked. This lock is also shown if you, sorry, let's get to that later. But so you can't actually touch the object. You can't move it. It's locked to that page because it's being copied from the master page, from the parent page. So if you ever wanted to, let's say, change the color of this bar that's located here, you would need to unlock it. I'm just going to show you this because you're going to need it a lot in the future. So in order to, and I'm going to undo it afterwards, but I'm just going to show you how to unlock master parent page objects that's on the document pages. So in order to unlock anything that's being sent from a parent page to a document page, you need to hold down Shift, Command on a PC, that's Shift Control, and then you click the object. Then it's unlocked, and then you can move it. The problem is actually, in this case, if I unlock this bar, this footer, it will not unlock the numbering, meaning that the object goes in front of the number, which means now the number is hidden. In this case, I would need to actually unlock the number as well. So like this, for example, where I unlock both at once, I simply just Shift Command, hold those down, and select both the number and the bar. But there's a logical way to do this instead. That would actually be to have the page number on a separate layer, which is above the header and footer. That way I could unlock this bar in the footer without actually the number being hidden behind the bar. So I'm just going to do one thing. I choose to undo the unlocking part. The reason why I show how to unlock is because we're going to use that again and again. So Shift, Command, click on anything on the document pages from the parent pages will unlock them. So, but this gave me an impression that I actually need to put this page numbering on a separate layer. So I'm going to create one more layer. I'm going to create new layer, and I'm going to name this layer page number. And I will move this object, this text frame, to my page number layer. So it's located up there. And you'll see that by it being pink. You can see that it's pink now, or whichever color that is. And this, let's try it again. If I go to my regular document pages and unlock my footer down here, Shift, Command, click on the footer, then the number will still be there because it's located on a higher layer. And then I could change this page to having let's say a yellow bar instead. So you can take elements from the master pages and change them from the parent pages and change them on the document pages. So if one page needed a unique appearance, you could simply unlock it and make modifications. I don't want that right now, so I'm just going to click undo again. It's just to show you that it's possible. Okay. So let's go up to G generic again. And on my generic page, I would also have a header. So I'm going to, this header, instead of making it one big bar, I'm just going to make it a thin stroke going from left edge to right edge. And I'll, of course, not make it in the page number layer, so I'll be sure that I'm located on the header and footer layer, and then I'll simply click and drag, holding down Shift so it becomes a straight line. Just make sure that you hold down Shift, right? Because otherwise you'll get a crooked line. And thus I placed it. That's using the line tool. And let's just give it a stroke color. I'm clicking on stroke down here, and I'm choosing the same orange that was being used on my footer. And perhaps inside of stroke, I'll just change it to have a weight of 2 points, so it's even more visible. Right now, I failed to hit the margin, so I can just simply choose my selection tool and move it so it is in contact with the margin, like that. And if ever I needed to look at this document without seeing the margins, I could simply just click W, and then we don't see all of these different guidelines. Okay. Yeah. So the next thing I'll do is I'll also include a chapter header up here. So I'll just use my type tool to do that and simply just drag a text box up here. You know, sometimes I would be more precise in the size of this text box, but we're not aiming at precision today. We're just aiming at making a design guide. So let's say this also needs to be Futura. Like I said, all that's written in big is going to be Futura. So I'm just going to change it to Futura. Perhaps I should look at my own screen. And I choose bold, just so it's easier to see. And I choose for it to be located on the right. And I choose for it to say chapter heading. And then I would actually like this to, if I need a big text box like this one, but I want the text to be located at the bottom of the text box instead of the top of the text box, I could simply just right-click my text box and choose text frame options. That's Command B if you like shortcuts. Text frame options. So text frame options, right-click to get text frame options, and then instead of saying align to top, I'll say align to bottom. That way my text starts at the bottom of the text box instead of the top of the text box. So I'll just click OK to that. And then we have text box where the text starts at the bottom. The text starts at the bottom of the text box. I don't know if you like this because actually now parts of the letters are actually intervening with the margin. They're going, for example, the P goes below the margin. So that's up to you. Perhaps I would actually choose to, whichever text goes inside of this big area, perhaps I would choose for that to always have a 10 millimeter inset from the top, so nothing from up here can intervene with things down here. But it's really up to you. You could also just move the text box higher up so it never intervenes with any of the stuff down there. Yeah, I think I'm just going to keep it like this. And again, I'll just make sure that it's located in the right layer. So I'll check, yes, it's located in headers and footers. Similarly, if you had created a bar in this case, where the text chapter header went on top of, then you would, of course, need to put it inside of the layer called page number. Because if you ever were to change color on the bar, then the chapter header would disappear, like the footer before, right? So it really depends. You could also have the chapter heading to be in the page number layer and then call the page number layer instead page number and chapter heading, right? So those are always located on top no matter what. Okay, so I think we got the general layout right now. Is there anything else we need? We could drag a box in here because we will be needing a box. So I'm just gonna drag a box in here. You know, I choose the rectangle tool to do so instead of the rectangle frame, instead of the text box and so on, because this content can be pictures on one page, it could be text on another page. So instead of just drag the box, which will be used, and then we can always say later, what's it going to be used for? Because you have the option inside of InDesign to right-click an object. If it's just a rectangle, you can right-click it and then choose content, and then you can assign whatever it's supposed to have inside of it, graphic, text, or unassigned. So right now it's just unassigned, and this, of course, will be located. I think in general will be text. So in general, I'll place this rectangle not in page number and chapter heading, but inside of the layer called text. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so just to show you what background could be used for, because as it looks right now, I would probably not even use background. But let's just pretend that I'm gonna need a background. So in my background layer, I'll just click on that and I'll drag another rectangle which goes all the way from the left edge, from the bottom of the header to the top of the footer, and all the way over to the right edge. So you can also just see what I'm doing if that sounded complicated. So I'll just drag a box here, right? And I'll fill that with color, not in the stroke, but in the fill, like that. And this will be background color. So if I'm writing with black text, I definitely shouldn't be making a black background color. So I'll choose black, and I'll choose a tint of 10%. So it's just a grayish color in the background, a very dim gray in the background. And you know, I'm a bit OCD like, so I would like to place my object. So I actually sometimes just make sure that it goes all the way to the edge. It's so dim that I can't even see it because the light is hitting the whiteboard. Is it still there? I think I made it bigger. Yeah, like that. Okay, so this is located on the background now. So if you go to the different pages, they will all have this gray background. And the good thing about it being located on the lowest layer, the one at the bottom, is that it will never get in front of anything else. It will always be behind everything else. Okay. So I think this is the generic layout. This is how it's gonna look in general on my different pages. So now I would like to create how the content pages would look in general. So I'm gonna tell my content pages that they will need to look like a generic page. And then I can always modify the content pages to look a bit different. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to my C content. I'm just gonna double click it. And then right click my C content and choose for it parent options for C content. And here I'll choose for it to be based on parent, G generic. And I'll just click OK. Bam! And there we have it. Then it becomes an exact replica of the G generic. They look identical now. The cool part about this general look is that if I ever change anything on G generic, bam, like that, it will also make changes to the C content, because the C content is a replica, you know, a copy that updates if I make changes to G generic. So that way, if I make changes here, they will automatically update on my C content. So So it's actually always a good idea to have like a generic template, because then you can always, if anything goes wrong, you also always have the G generic to go back to. Okay, so perhaps I would want something different on my C content. Perhaps I know that the C content is actually, in general, I don't know, text-based. Perhaps I have a content page, a parent page, which is typically for text, and another which is typically for images. So I could actually have renamed this parent options for C content. I could have renamed this to text content, or actually content text. That's more logical, because then I could have a content images as well. Okay, so on the one called content text, I would unlock the box right here that I created, but it's locked because it arrives from another parent page, and things that are copied, replicated from the parent page, they need to be unlocked. And you remember the shortcut for that? I told you already. It's Shift, Command, and then click. It seems like I put mine on the wrong layers. Let me just go back to, I'll just click undo and go back to my G generic. It's because it has no color. Okay, so I need to be more precise. Okay, so just ignore that. Ignore that I for a second clicked the wrong thing. So when I'm unlocking this box right here, I should, of course, since it's invisible, it's an invisible box, I should, of course, Shift Command click and then click the margin, because the margin is where I attach the box to. It would have been easier if I just gave it color. I'm gonna give it color, goddammit. I'm gonna give this color. Bam, like this. Just temporarily giving it color like that. Bam, then we can see it. And then down here, I'm gonna Shift Command click the color, bam, and then it's unlocked. In a second, I'll go back and change it to being no color, right? So I could actually do that already if I wanted to. Just go back and say no color, and then it's still unlocked on this document, but has no color now. Yeah. Okay, so did that make sense, or did that just fuck everything up for you? Are you still with me? Hopefully you are. Okay, so in this box, I'll just right click it while it's selected, and I'll choose for the content to be text, right? Because we just said this is gonna be text by naming the parent page content text. So I'll choose to right click my box, my invisible box, and choose for its content to be text. Now you will never have problems clicking it again, because the text box does not need color. It will always, if you click in the area of the text box, it will always get selected. It's just when it's an unassigned object, you'll have to click specifically on the borders of the object. You know that from Illustrator. You have to precisely hit the object, otherwise you'll select something else. So that's the case here if it's an unassigned object which has no color inside of it as well. But you see here with the text box, I can go outside and I can go inside again all the time, and even though there is nothing inside of it, it will always be like if there was color inside of it. Same goes for a picture box if I make an image frame. Okay, let's just fill some color, some text into this so we know how it will look. So I'm gonna right click this box right here, and I'm gonna choose for it to fill with placeholder text. So right click and choose to fill with placeholder text. And this placeholder text is definitely not what I want, but it's an indication of how it would look if it was using the basic paragraph style for this document. Inside of graphic design, we have these different rules for text. For example, that text becomes less readable if it's more than 65 characters per line. And this right here is a lot more than that. Actually, I can go into window info to get an idea of how much text there is on one line by simply just selecting one line of text, and it will say there is 147 characters on that line of text. So that's a bit too much. If I were to make this so it's easier to read, I would probably divide this at least in 2 columns, but I think it's going to be better in 3 columns for this design guide. So that was in the info panel. You can get these. Also, if you want to count your entire text box, you can just select all, and it will tell you in this entire text box there's 4,455 characters, there's 686 words, there's 35 lines of text, and there's 10 paragraphs included in this text box. So the info panel is actually really great if you're trying to avoid using Word and want to count how many characters you're at. Yeah, okay. So I just closed my info panel, and instead I'll just want to make my text bigger so I can actually not bigger, but instead I want to make some headers, some subheaders, and so on. So let's just try to assume this ipsum loem text is headers and so on. So there's going to be a header up here, there's going to be a subheader down here, but also I'll want to create these columns. So let's create the columns right away. I'll just right click on my text box while it's selected still, and I'll choose for it to open the text frame options. That's still Command B, Control B if you're on a PC. And in here, I'll choose for it to create 3 columns if that was, I don't know. I think in this format 3 columns looks really nice. Also because when I'm making a design guide, I actually love when it's not crowded with text. So the text, for me often, the text would mainly be in column number 1, the one on the left, and then I would actually have images in the 2 other columns, but images that are where there's also text provided that describes what's on the images. For example, if it was a logo, I would read beneath, this is the standard logo variant, and then another logo, this is the black and white logo variant, and so on. So it would be images with text details afterwards. So that's how I'm gonna build this design manual. You don't have to do it like me when you create the design manual for the company which you're doing it for, but it's just an example of how you can make it. Okay, since I would like mine to not start exactly from the start of the margin, because then the text would go precisely where the color gray starts, I would also insert spacing from the top. Before I do so, I would like to switch off the button called Make All Settings the Same. I switch that off, so it's only the top and the bottom that I'm gonna change. So I'll change the top. If you can't see any changes happening, you can always go to switch preview on, and then you'll be able to see the changes. And since I remember my margins being 36 pixels, I choose from the start for them to be 36. I would often choose that the top is a number which is somehow related to the number 36. So by using 36, that would be 9, 18, 27, and 36. So it would actually be logical if it was 36, that it's 9 that I'm using, or perhaps 18. That makes sense in my opinion. Half of what the margin is actually a great number. So I would probably use that value at the top and that value at the bottom. If you use numbers that somehow relate, math that somehow relates when putting up the layout, it often creates a better layout for your design. So this is a good way to make your insets based on the size of the margins and so on. Okay, so I'm just gonna click OK to this, and this actually looks pretty nice so far. I think we can just click W just to get an idea of how would it look without all of these margins. And I think this looks nice so far. There's of course too much text, but it looks nice so far. Okay, so what am I gonna do with this text? I'm gonna find out how is the header supposed to look. So in here, I'll change it again to Futura. You know, Futura is simply what I like today. It's actually also the font we use in general for Roggen, the bar I own. And, you know, it's not a bad font. It was actually, it won an award one year for being the most beautiful modern font for headings. So, okay, let's say that I actually want this text to go all the way over into the other text box right here. Well, that seems like impossible right now. So is there any way that I could actually make this header go all the way over into column number 2? Well, let's check that out. So if I were to, you know, it's almost impossible to find anything when you right click. So instead I'll just go to character, actually paragraph. Let me just remember if it's the right place I am. You know, I always have a tendency, is it paragraph or is it character? So I just need to check it out fast. It's paragraph. And I just need to, oh, there it is, there it is. Here it is, span columns. And inside of span columns, you can tell it to span to 2 columns simply by just selecting. Oh, if you can't find that, it's inside of the paragraph panel, inside of the menu of the paragraph panel, and here you choose the one called span columns. And you can click preview if you want to see how it looks. And you can choose for it to span all columns, or you can choose for it just to span 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns, 5 columns. Of course, it makes no sense to span 5 columns if there's 3 columns. But for example, if I only wanted it to do it to 2, it would stop at the end of number 2, and then it would put the body text all the way up to the top, so it's not being interrupted by the spacing of the header. So this really depends on your preference. In this case, I would probably want it to also push down the body text on column number 3. Just know that it's possible actually that it only affects the first 2 columns. Okay, this makes it possible for me to make an actually very long heading, right? Okay, so after this heading, I would like for it to actually push text down so the body text is not located so close to the header. So how do I do that? Well, you can simply just go to these paragraph rules right here. They're also located up here. You'll find them all. They're like filling out half the screen in the content menu if you choose paragraph formatting up here. But I'll just choose it from down in the panels right here, and I can choose it to simply just push whatever comes below. That's the one right here. Push that down further, right? And then it pushes all 3 lines down further. So let's just 9 pixels seems logical since I was using 36, 18. It would also be logical then it's 9 pixels. I think this gives a gap that I like. And you see, it doesn't really matter what I write up here. This is just text that I need so I get an impression of how will it look in the end. Sometimes, I choose to write something logical instead. This is where the heading goes, right? That helps me when I'm then unlocking it on different pages. Okay, so it says specifically what's supposed to be in those areas. Okay, so if I need to, I made a lot of modifications here. Sometimes I actually also choose for it to not be measured in metrics, the gap between each and every letter. I choose that to be the kerning. I choose that to be optical instead. I could use a lot of time telling the difference between metrical and optical, but that would take 10 minutes. So let's just not do that. And instead I'll say optical often looks more beautiful, especially when it's in headers, subheaders, and so on. So optical, I'm going to change it to optical. I'm also going to change it to use the right language. So English UK, that makes sense. You can also find all of these settings in the character panel or the paragraph panel, depending on which character settings it is. And is there one last thing I would like? I think this is fine. Okay, so we're ready to create our first paragraph style. So I'll go into paragraph style, the panel we have open here, paragraph styles, and because I want to use this heading again and again in my document. So I'll just simply go here inside of the paragraph styles panel, and I'll click the burger menu like that, and I'll choose new paragraph style with this text selected, right here. I'll choose for it to apply the style to selection. So whatever I'm doing right now in this menu will affect the text that I have selected. Whatever this text had of formatting will also be the formatting for my new paragraph style. So it says Futura bold, size 38. Perhaps I'll change that to 36 actually, so it makes sense with the measurements. I'll name this header, and perhaps I'll also name it span columns, because if I'm gonna reuse this header later on in my text, it's important to know that it will actually span throughout 3 columns. So I need to name it. This is important that I name it span columns. Otherwise, it's unusable down in the rest of the text, unless I wanted to split the text down there. Okay, so I think this is so all of the different things that I selected down here for it to have a UK dictionary, and for it to be aligned to the left, and for it to be optical, and so on. These are actually settings that will already be here. By just having this selected, it will know all of these settings. And I just changed one of them into being 36. If you want to preview the changes, changing it to font sizes, you can just click preview down here, and it will show what the changes look like. I'm gonna click OK after having named it header span columns. Is that spelled correctly? Oh, doesn't matter, whatever. Okay, so let's say I wanted something in my text later on to be to be this header. I need the header down here as well. Well, you'll notice that then it will basically fuck your text up. So perhaps I also want this header to be able to be used in other places where it does not span the columns. So in that case, I'll just I'll just click this header span columns. I'm just selecting the text, and then I'll go to make a new paragraph style. And in here I'll select the menu called span columns. Okay, I'll just say it again. I'm creating a new paragraph style after having clicked for this part of the text to use this paragraph style. So a new paragraph style, and then I'll go to span columns, and I'll choose for it to not span columns. This way it will only take out this one column. It's still keeping the space after option that it needs to push the text below 9 pixels down, and I think I'll keep that option. That's inside of indent and spacing. I'll click OK. And this way, I forgot to rename it, so I'll just edit paragraph style 1 and simply just rename it. You could also just click once gently and you'll be able to rename it. I'll just call this one header, if I could spell. And this way we have one called header and one called header span columns. Okay, so I don't know if I'll use it right there, but at least now we have it. I'm gonna delete the text right there. Oh, and you see right now it's trying to force my body text to have the same formatting as my original header, meaning that it has a much higher point size and leading. Okay, and that's actually because I have right next to my cursor, I have one invisible character using the header formatting. So in order to get rid of this, you could delete that one invisible character, or you could simply just be in the area where it's making the error and just go here to basic paragraph. You see that it shows that there's a plus next to the basic paragraph. That means there's an override. There's something different. Then if you hold down Alt, that's also called Options, and click on the plus sign, it will force that override out of the formatting. So and it will make these plus signs with each and every one of your paragraph styles if it has something from 2 paragraph styles in the same text. Then it will show this plus. There's something different. Actually, just by me writing something with, let's say, bold, Minion Pro. Just by changing the font, you'll see that it will again show that there's something different here. So immediately when you make changes, it will show that there's a plus next to it. A plus is not bad necessarily. It's just an indication that this part looks different. So if I were to change this to something else, you'll notice that now that's a font that doesn't work. It will show a plus, indicating that something is different. Okay, so the next thing I'll do is actually, I'll probably want to change my basic paragraph, actually. I'm quite sick and tired of it, the basic paragraph being Minion Pro. So I could also actually, normally I don't even use the basic paragraph. But it's what InDesign automatically goes back to if it doesn't know any better. So in this case, I never use Minion Pro. Never ever use Minion Pro, except if I forgot to change the font. So I love Optima, for example. So I could actually set my InDesign to have its basic paragraph being Optima. So I'll just right-click my basic paragraph, and I'll just choose for it to have Optima instead. Optima like that. And 12 point size is perhaps too big, so I'll change that to 11. Okay. And now you'll notice that all the text in my document, all the body text in my document has changed to being Optima instead of Minion Pro. Except, of course, this header, which I made a specific appearance for. Yes. Okay, so let's continue to. Let's just make a few paragraph styles, so all the text is prepared. All the text formatting is prepared. So the next thing I'll do is I'll create a subheader, and actually, I'll just set this to be Futura. I just choose some of the text here to be Futura. And I don't know, perhaps, yes, 18 would be logical because my header up here is 36. I don't have much text to write here. So if I put this to be 18 point, I just need to be sure that in general, I'm good at finding short subheader titles, right? So perhaps it should be 12. That's 1/3 of 36. Okay, I think that's gonna be better because then I can make a bit longer titles for these subheaders. Okay, so this subheader will be named subheader. So I don't know, should I make some changes? English UK, yeah, we're gonna make this into being optical as well. So I'll just select the entire subheader down here and I'll choose optical. You need to select the entire text, select the entire text, because otherwise if you just have your cursor inside of it, it will say a number instead. It will say this is the value 6, this is the value 17, which actually just means it's the spacing, the kerning between two letters. Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna choose for this to be a new paragraph style, and I'll call this one subheader. Okay. And let's just say 12. Okay, and I see that there's some override going on here. So just to remove that, I'll just Alt-click on the plus sign, bam. So that goes away. And I think this will be my new subheader look. And I'll just call this subheader goes here. And do not worry if it suddenly switches over to being basic paragraph. I can always just click down on subheader and that looks really awesome. You know, you could also choose for your subheader to span columns if you wanted that, but I think this looks fine. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make sure that my basic body text also looks nice. So I'm gonna just select anywhere inside of this body text. This is basic paragraph text. Select anywhere inside of that. Perhaps just select one word and just make changes to that one word. Let's say I want this to be, I don't know, Optima. If that's right for your company, that's cool. It could also be something else. Yeah, just to make it different, I'll just change it to Gil Sans. This, of course, needs to be whatever font you selected for your company, right? So if you find out Impact is the right heading font for your company, the company you're working on making a design manual for, well, then that's what you need to put inside of your design manual. So the design manual has the colors of the company. The design manual has the fonts of the company. You write the design manual in the same identity as the identity parts you put inside of the design manual. So don't make it an appearance that makes absolutely no sense to the identity of the company. Make an appearance of the design manual that correlates to their own identity. I hope that makes sense. So, of course, I'm not just at random selecting fonts. The fonts I would be selecting is the fonts that is going to be used for the company. That's the ones I'm going to use in my design guide. So let's say that for this company, they choose Gil Sans regular. Okay, so that's going to be what I'm going to be using. I don't know if I'm going to use opticals or metricals. I'm going to use English UK, that's for sure, because it's going to be difficult to write in Danish if I'm not Danish, unless, whatever. Unless you had a lot of language classes. Okay, so I changed this part. It was just this one word that I changed, and I actually think I'm going to change it to 12 point. And while this text is selected then for that one word that I changed, I'm going to make a new paragraph style out of that. And I'm going to call this paragraph style body text. Yeah. And I could change anything in here later on if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that. I'm happy with the few changes that I did make. And you know what? Then you can just select all the body text in your entire text box and choose for that to become the same body text, blam, and then it's all Gil Sans. It's all the same font type, it's all the same size, it's all something that would make you happy. Yeah. Okay, so one last thing I would say is this subheader about formatting the paragraph styles is sometimes I actually prefer that even though the subheader takes out only one column, it sometimes looks nice that it actually spans throughout all 3 columns. So I could actually go back to my subheader, right click it, choose edit subheader, and simply choose for it to span columns, and thus you have this gap that's being created. So it seems more like there's a alignment to where the text is starting from. It's up to you if you do it like that. I personally like it, but it makes this subheader become less, that ruins my subheader paragraph style, because then it always spans columns. So what I could do is actually just make a copy of it. I went outside, I canceled, and then I click to duplicate the style, and this duplicate I'm going to rename to subheader, not spam, span columns. Is columns with 1 L or 2?
1.
1, yes, I thought so. So I did spell it wrong before. Okay, and I'm just gonna go down to span columns, choose for it to be span columns, okay, bam, 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 and then I'll just, since it was selected, it made the changes already. But otherwise I could just click it on and off depending on if I want to see how does it look with span columns, how does it look without. Yes. Okay, so my body text, I would, if I start using other font size, let's say I'm just going to put something in here. Just, for example, oh my God, my subheaders are the same size. I'm just going to change something with my subheaders just to show you an example of what could happen to your text. Let's just do it like that. Okay, so I changed my subheader to being point size 15, and that's actually to show you something truly annoying when working with columns if you don't use baseline grid. So I zoomed in, I changed the subheader to be 15. The reason why it did not make this unaligned was actually because I was using the same size subheader as size of my body text. So that would mean that they will always be straight next to each other. But if I start using bigger headers or bigger subheaders, and they're being located inside of the body text now and then, which is quite normal that you have like a new chapter starting, then you use a subheader for that paragraph. So then this happens. The text will not be aligned next to each other in their separate columns. So how do I make sure that these body text parts are aligned to each other? It really just looks truly awful when they're not aligned. So how do I make sure that they are aligned? Well, to do that, you go inside of, you can choose it either while you're writing the text. You could choose this inside of a paragraph panel. There's something down here in the paragraph panel called Align to Baseline Grid. You can also find that if you're up here in the formatting controls. You can find it. Where is it? Oh, God damn it. Perhaps because I have mine in a wrong resolution because I'm showing it on a projector. I can't find it. Okay, but you would be able to see it in the paragraph formatting controls as one of the options up here. But also down here you can find it. I often actually just choose it inside of the paragraph style because it's a paragraph style I already created. So I might as well just change the paragraph style for the body text to be using my baseline grid. So I'm just going to do that straight away. I'm going to right click my body text. I'm going to choose edit body text, and I'm going to go inside of the indent and spacing and choose for the align to grid to be all lines. So all lines are set to follow the baseline grid, bam, like that. And this, trust me, this will look absolutely incredibly bad, bam, like that. Yeah, so, and that's because it has double, that's because it has double the line leading. It's simply making, every time a new line starts, it makes an extra line jump. So in order to fix that, I need to fix what my baseline grid settings are. And you can always see your baseline grid, first of all, by just going into View, Grids and Guides, and simply choosing the one called Show Baseline Grid. So if I switch that on, I'll of course need to click W to see again what's going on. And you know, I can't see my baseline grid. Why can't I see my baseline grid? That's because I made a gray text box on top of it. But you see that there's actually a small part of it up here. So first of all, I want it to show my baseline grid even if there's objects in front of it. And next off, I'll also want to change how the baseline grid is so it doesn't make this double line shift. So how to change your baseline grid? You simply go into InDesign Preferences, Grids, and if you're on a PC, that will be located in Edit Preferences, Grids. In here, if you want to see the grid and you made a background color so you can't see it, you'll just tell it to be able to view it even though it's in the back. So you can switch off this one called Grids in the back. That way you will be able to see the grid. And just before we do anything else in here, I'll just show you that it's true. You cannot preview when you're inside of Preferences. So you need to actually click OK and then go back into it. So you see when I click OK, you'll see why it's doing this. And the reason why it's doing this is actually because the increment of this line of text is set to be based on a 10-point font size, while the font size I'm using is a 12-point font size. Meaning this increment right here is set to be 12, while the auto increment of this font is set to be 14.4. You see that up here? The leading is set to be 14.4. But if I go into InDesign Preferences, Grids, it tells me that the increment area is set to 12. This value 12 does not correlate with the value 14.4. So it needs to correlate with that value. And you simply do that by either changing the font in the document to, for the body text to be smaller, or by simply changing the increment area of your baseline grid inside of preferences to being the same value or higher than the value which the font uses. So this is, and it's always, this is just for body text you do this. You don't do it for headers, subheaders, and so on. The baseline grid is used for body text. Okay, so I'll change this to being at least 14.4 because that's what my body text is using as leading. Sometimes I make it bigger. That just means that you're actually overruling this 14.4 of the font size, because if you write it 15 here, it will actually also be 15 for the font. The font will be pushed to use the value 15. And that's actually also what happens. If it was 12, if this value was 12, then it will push the font one line longer down because there's not enough room for 14.4 on an area that is only 12. So it pushes it down one line further down. So this increment area is the dominant. It's the apex predator. Okay, sorry. 14.4. You could also write 15 if you want just a bit more. Yeah. I think this is fine. Relative to the top margin makes more sense than top of the page. There's no reason for it to actually start at the top of the page. It might as well start at the top of the margin. And of course the start should just be 0, because then you indicated that it's from the start of the margin, and so on. Yeah. Okay, so the view threshold is just how much you need to be zoomed in to be able to see the baseline grid. If you zoom out far enough, you won't be able to see it. So that's just visibility. Document grid, that's a whole other thing that we'll talk about when we get to editorial design, which is the next course you have with me. Okay, so now you see we have a nice looking document. So now the text is actually following the baseline grid, and this just looks nice. And again, if I go to change in preferences the grids to being, let's say, 15, like that, it just adds a bit more leading to the lines of text. And I think this is starting to look quite okay. Okay, so let's just make one last change with my paragraph. If I want my subheader, every time I use my subheader, if I wanted to switch automatically to using body text, that makes total sense, that every time you click enter after having written a subheader, it automatically switches to using body text. Well, then you can simply go into your subheader, edit subheader, simply go into that, right-clicking to choose edit subheader, and then in the basic, in the general section, you could choose for the next style to be body text. That means next style is just when I click enter, it switches to that style. Yes. Okay. So this means if let's say I just do like this, I'm just gonna delete all of the freaking text right here, and then I'm gonna simulate that I'm writing in this document. So I'll choose subheader, and then when I click enter, you will start writing in body text. Let's see what happened here. Why did it jump one further? Body text. Okay, so this looks absolutely horrendous. Why is this? This is pushing my text a bit down. So I'll just go into my subheader text, edit subheader, and I'll just tell it to perhaps also follow, my subheader needs to also follow the grid line. Okay, like that. And then this looks much better. So, and that's just to avoid my subheader being too far down, so it actually pushes my text one extra line down. That was the same problem as before, where it pushed to make 2 lines distance. So you can always go in and modify your subheader. My normal header, I always just tell not to use the baseline grid, but often the subheader is located alongside with the body text. So often it's a good idea with the subheader to just tell it to use baseline grid as well, but not with every line of text, because see, if I choose edit subheader, choose indent spacing, all lines, it's gonna be not looking good when I make a new line, because then the spacing, the leading between these 2 lines will be too big. So you always choose for it to be edit subheader again. You always, for subheaders, choose for it to be first line only. This way it will look much better. Right? This looks bad, this looks better. Okay. Yeah. And this does not need to be subheader. Oh, it's because someone's up there. Bam, like that. And then body text. Perfect. Now it follows the baseline grid. Let's just see. Yes. Okay, I think that's enough about text. We'll have, we'll be adjusting paragraph styles and so on a lot more when we're dealing with editorial design, which is the next course. Because you'll also be able to base stuff on, and you'll be able to make character styles and so on. And we'll be looking a lot on that when we get to editorial design. I think right now what we need is a small break. Is that cool with you? Otherwise, you will die. Okay, final part of finishing our design guide, specifics inside of InDesign. Okay, I'm just gonna change one fast thing inside of my paragraph styles, which is that whenever I use the header with span columns, it switches over to using the subheader with span columns, and then when I click enter again, it switches over to using the body text. So I'm just gonna go into header, edit header, span columns, and then choose for it to have the next style being the subheader span columns. Okay, then this edit subheader span columns to switch to being the next style body text. Okay, so that was the last change. I'm not gonna touch paragraph styles anymore. But this just means that if I ever go into, let's say, I'm just gonna drag a C content page onto, let's say, page 3. If I go down here now and I simply delete everything, Shift Command, you don't have to do this, but Shift Command, click that text box and simply just remove everything. Then if I start out with using the paragraph style header span columns, you'll notice that when I'm done writing blah 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 blah, click enter, it then switches to using the subheader which spans columns, and then when I click enter, it switches to using the body text, right? So that's gonna be very helpful that I made this change, so I don't have to all the time click over here to make sure that it changes paragraph style. Okay, so just know that. I'm just gonna delete that page. Bam, be gone, foul page. Okay, so last but not least, we'll have this field right here be for images and text. So I'm gonna create some rectangle frames for, let's say this was supposed to be color, logo, anything. So I'm just gonna make it so that there could be, let's say, color from, or picture from here to here, or here, or something like that, right? It's generic, you know, you can always, if you find out this was not the right size, you can always go back and change it. I'll make sure that it's on the right layer. Right now it's located on the text layer, so that's absolutely not where I want it. So I'm going to put it on the graphic layer. This layer is a bit hard to see on screen up here, but it should be more visible on your screen. But the projector is really bad at showing bright green. And I'll make sure that I actually have 4 of these image frames. But before I do that, I would like to just see what happens if I write text in my text area. You see, what happens now is the text continues behind the image frame, right? So I need to be sure that the image frame pushes away the text. If this was an image with color, I'll just put a color in there instead. You'll see that the text is actually then hidden behind the image. So we'll need to push the text away. In order to do that, I'll go to my text wrap. I'm not making 4 image boxes yet because I need to adjust my settings for this one image box and then make copies of that one. So I'll go to my text wrap. I'll choose the one called wrap around bounding box, which is the second icon. The third icon will be relevant in editorial design, where we will be putting in extracted images into InDesign, so the text will follow the extraction of the image instead. Then that would be the third icon you would use. But in this case, since it's just a box, you would choose wrap around bounding box. Okay, then next off, we'll push the text away from the picture so it's just not all the way up towards the picture. So I'll change the inset. Oh, damn it, it's changing all of them. I'll, of course, switch off the make all settings the same, switch that off. And then I'll choose for up and down inset to be 9 pixels. Like that. So now it's pushed away, it's pushing away the text 9 pixels. It's actually pushing it further away because the body text is attached to the baseline grid. So if ever it's just pushed a bit away, then it goes all the way down to 15 pixels leading, because that's what we set our baseline grid to be. But I think that's fine. I'll just put in temporarily a color, actually just gray, so we can see this is where the images are supposed to go. And I don't know if this perhaps I'll just set it to be around here, I don't know. And I'll just make a copy and put that down here somewhere. That's by just holding down Alt. You could make a copy. And I'm using the baseline grid actually to help me place it, and also the text frame options, the gutter of the text frame option. Perhaps actually it would be better to set my text frame options to have a gutter width of, oh, that's actually a good gutter width, 12. That's 1/3 of 36. So it's actually a good gutter width. But you could also change the air in between columns, you see, by just changing the gutter. But this was actually okay with me, so because it was set to 12 pixels. So I'll just make another copy of this image box over here, and that means if I start writing text here, blah 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 blah, it will then jump down and start writing down here. So this makes perfect sense according to my layout, that it's writing the text below the images, right? So this means that now I can actually delete, well, I could also just write image text over here, but instead I'm actually just gonna delete everything up to here. So subheader goes here, body text goes here. So now I have my generic layout. There's also one last thing I want for it to include, which is when it puts pictures inside of these boxes, I don't want these pictures to come in their original size, because that means that perhaps I will only be able to see 10% of that image in this box, right? If it's a big picture. So I'll just right-click my image frame and I'll choose the one called fitting, and I'll go inside of frame fitting options. You know, it was actually bad of me to make 4 boxes all at once, because then I have to make this again and again and again for each of the 4 ones, except if I created an object style, which you will learn about in editorial design. So this was actually bad. I need to delete these again. So just going inside of right-clicking and choosing fitting, frame fitting options, I would choose for it to align from the middle, so it becomes smaller from the middle. I would choose the fitting to be, you know, if it's an image of a landscape, you would typically choose the one called fill frame proportionally. That makes the frame entirely filled out. But that's bad if it's a logo, because that means the logo may have some parts going outside of the frame, right? So in a design manual, if it was images in general, you would choose fill frame proportional. But if it's graphic where you need to see everything, you would choose fit content proportionally. I hope that makes sense. Fit content proportionally. Make sure that if you put a logo in there and the logo has a specific size like this is the logo. Well, then instead of it, then it will just make sure that it's exactly everything inside of the frame. Whereas if you choose fit frame proportionally, it would instead go all the way out to the edge. It would make sure that the frame goes all the way out to the edge of the frame. I hope that makes sense. So this is good when it's images where you want them to fill out the entire box, but it's bad for graphic if you want nothing to disappear, nothing to be outside the box. So since this is a design guide, you would most likely want everything to be in there, except in the chapter called Image Styles. You would probably want instead for it to fit the frame proportionally. Fit proportionally to frame. Okay, so fit content proportional is natural for a design guide. So I'm going to choose that one, and I want it to be centered. So I'll of course align from the center. Don't crop anything. That's, yeah. Okay, so this means if I put a logo in here, the entire logo will be seen. Okay, so now all the correct settings are here, so I'll just make a copy. Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. There we have it. This is how my design manual will look in general. So let's just see if that works. Of course, here we'll have, I don't know if we'll do that in time, but this page will have the some kind of forward perhaps, and this page will have a table of contents perhaps. Or otherwise it will be table of content first, that's perhaps more logical, and then forward afterwards. But then comes, you know, the content of the design manual. So let's just start down on this one. I'll tell page 3 and every page that's after this that they'll use the C content text. So and in my case I only have 2 pages. So let's just create some more pages. Okay. So front page, table of content, forward, and then from this page onwards, I'm going to change it to being C content text. So I have all of these selected, and then I right click, choose apply parent to pages, and I choose it to be the C content text. Okay. So now all of these pages will look identical. So this one would contain, if I wanted to include a table, a tone of voice, this would be the tone of voice. Let's just assume this is the tone of voice. So I'll just, sorry, I'm on the wrong page, god damn it. This would be the tone of voice. I'll just simply shift command click the chapter heading, and I'll just rename it tone of voice. And you know, sometimes people attach those with dashes. Is that called dashes? Whatever it's called. Tone of voice. And then you could, you know, start putting stuff in here. I would probably readjust this layout for the tone of voice, since it's mainly text-based when it comes to tone of voice. So, but instead of doing that, I'll just go straight to the next chapter, which is on the next page. And this will be logo. So I'll shift command click the chapter heading, and I'll name this logo. And you'll probably have a lot of pages named logo. A lot of pages that has some information about your logo. This could be, you know, the logo itself, logo variants, trademarks, you know, where it's being used on different types of products that have different unique characteristics, so it's called a trademark. For example, Coca-Cola is not just Coca-Cola, it's also Coca-Cola Zero, it's you know, cherry, it's whatever versions, lime, whatever versions of Coca-Cola is out there, so those would be different trademarks, and they have different unique colors, different unique ways of appearing depending on that product. So that would be variants of the logo, various trademarks. Okay, so you could have a lot of pages with logo. It could also be minimum size, how it appears when it's small or how it appears when it's bigger, respect distance, you know, spacing that it needs to have depending on how it's placed to other objects and so on. So there's really a lot of things, and probably Iris was talking about all of those things yesterday when you had classes with her. So there's no point in me having to talk about all of those things. But okay, so let's see if this works, this generic layout that I created. So I'll just write something here. You see, if it does this thing right here, that it deletes the entire line and then starts writing in a new font, well, then just go inside of here and, you know, just click paragraph styles and then header. It's simply because it actually, you see, if I start writing on the first line, if I delete all the text, it will actually think that it becomes the next paragraph. So instead of deleting all the text right here, I'm just going to delete everything except one letter. And I'm going to call this, what was the name of the company again? Like this? Okay. Jeg vil bare, at det er noget med rygning at gøre. Okay, and what more? In 2 words? Yeah. I don't know. I'm just gonna write something, right? You would know what to write here. And okay, so next line, you know, I already made the next line, but I could also just click enter and just write in that. Didn't I tell it not? Okay, now it changes. Super. So I would just write down here. This is the characteristics of logo use. I'm just, you know, writing something totally random. And so I'll just, when you use the logo, you become happy. You'll write stuff there about the rules and how they're supposed to be respected and blah blah blah. It can really be anything. Okay, so next off, I'll just, perhaps I know that there will also be some text about trademark variants. I should be looking on my screen instead of the projection. When using this and that, this happens. And perhaps I'll just zoom in a bit so we can actually see what's going on. Okay, so next off, I'll just put in some text, and let's just do like this, not like that, but like this. And I'm just going to place some placeholder text. Insert placeholder text. And now let's just assume that I wrote my text until this area right here. So instead of, you know, some of you are like, you do the word method, which is clicking enter until you get all the way over to this section. Stop doing that. In InDesign, you can simply just, when you're done with a column, let's say I don't have any text right here. When I'm done in this column, you can simply just hold down the FN key and then click enter. That makes it jump to next column. And then you can continue writing there. That's on a Mac, that's the FN key and then hit enter. On a PC, if you have a delete key, if you have an enter key, aside from also having the return key, it's difficult nowadays because everyone calls both of them enter now. But the one you normally call enter on your computer is truly named return. But if you're on a PC which has a numeric keyboard as well, out in the numeric section of the keyboard, there's actually a key called enter. And if you hit that one, that will make a column shift. Some PCs actually have the FN key, so you could click FN and then the return key or the enter button, whatever you call it, and it would make a column shift. I think all of you have either one of these things on your computer. Otherwise, just ask me when we're done with this. Okay, so then when I write, when using the logo, it should look like this. Ah, man, I can't write. But when using it differently, it should look like this. This is really crap text. You would, of course, make it logical depending on the content. So I'm just going to show you that you can actually use these frames. So I'm going to unlock this image frame right here as well and just put a logo in there. And, you know, there's no reason for these boxes to be gray, especially if I put a PNG or an AI file into it, because then the gray will still appear. But so I'm just going to remove the gray from it, and then I'm going to file place, and I'm going to find a logo. I'm just going to put in Roggen's logo, just so I can manipulate you guys into visiting Roggen or remembering Roggen. I'm going to choose. Oh, yeah, this is actually good. I can't even see the OK button. Oh, here. See, because I choose for it to adjust to so the content fits, there's none of the logo missing. Okay, so we actually have some different variants. We have 3 different variants. We have one in black, we have one in white, and we have one in red. That's used for different situations. And we have one with payoff, and what the fucking hell? I need to go back to my master page. There's something not right here. Okay, but let's just say we only had 2 variants. We had the traditional variants of black and red. Let's just... People actually normally read from left to right instead of from top to bottom. So let's make it logical. I'm going to put the red one over here. If I was to use the white version, I would probably use a gray background, because otherwise the white one would be invisible. But I'm just going to choose this one to disappear, then choose place, file place. I use Command D. That's the shortcut for command for placing. Roggen logo white. Bam. Oh yeah, I had a gray background. So we can actually see it. I was supposed to bring the red one in, so that was actually my mistake. There we go. Okay, so this is the traditional variants. Then we also have 2 other variants. I'm just gonna select these 2 and then choose for it not to have any color. Bam. And then I'm gonna actually place without having anything selected. I'll just go back to logo with payoff for print and then choose the black and the red one. And I'll click on the frame, bam, and the frame right here. And so there we have 2 different logo variants, one with a payoff and the other one, or slogan, and the other one without. And this is actually correlates directly to a chapter that I would include, which is about minimum size, because if this logo, Home of Rock and Metal, is used in a small size, then it's unreadable, the Home of Rock and Metal. So I would make a rule for when is it supposed to be this logo and when is it supposed to be the other logo. If this becomes too small, it switches to being this logo instead. Right? But I'm not going to go into that. You can make chapters for that yourself. I'm just going to click W so I can see how does this look so far. And you know, if you had actually filled this out so it looked nice and proper, like let's say this, it's actually starting to look like something that would look good in the design manual. This was probably too much. I'm just copy pasting. So you see, this is how your generic layout could look like. this is like a normal page, so there's no, if you needed it to be different, let's say up here, you needed your tone of voice to be different. Well, then you could just tell it, okay, I don't need these image boxes right here on these two columns, so instead I'll have text flowing all the way throughout my layout. So I'll just fill it with placeholder text, and then you'll see you can easily change the layout. You can also instead choose for it to say, okay, this image box right here is going to be the main focus. It's going to be one huge image on this page. Whoops. It's going to be one huge image on this page. Well, then because it's using the text wrap, you can easily just put it over here, so it takes out most of your page, and then it will just push the text away, so you can just write, some caption text to it down at the bottom. So it's really easy to adjust your layout when you first created these generic content pages. If you know that you'll be using a layout like this often, where it's mainly picture, well, then you could actually just copy this part of it, go to Pages, then make one called, make a new parent, and make sure that the new parent is called, let's say, CV, like content visuals, and based on the C content text, okay? And then you'll simply just unlock these different image boxes, bam, and go into Edit, Paste in Place, because I made a copy of that image box, and then you have your CV page, which consists mainly of an image box. And then you could simply just tell it, okay, let's say page 8 is for image styles. Well, then I'll just drag my CV content visuals down on page 8, and that page changes layout. I think that's enough. I think you can actually, you get an idea of how you could actually make a design manual now which reuses parts from the generic layout from the master pages. Start using master pages in general when you make documents that are several pages, because what I see often when students are flipping through their design manual or a style sheet or a style guide, or even a report made by the students, I see that the header and the footer is just jumping up and down all the time, and this is automatically prevented for all the different elements in the layout by just making sure that you use master pages. Then it will have a fluent look when you scroll through the pages, and it's going to look really professional. I think, I would like to have talked more about how to construct the front page, how to make a good looking table of content, and how to make the different chapters. But we're all out of time, and I think it's better to just keep your brain from melting by stopping now instead of continuing for too long. But, I have actually videos on how to make master pages and so on. I think videos that are about 4.5 hours long, you can watch on YouTube, where I've just gotten through a lot more issues dealing with master pages and paragraph styles. But to just prepare you for the future, you will be learning how to make an automated version of a table of content when we get to editorial design. In a design guide, it's not that necessary, because often it's not that many pages as a magazine would be the one you'll be making in editorial design. It is, though, often it's a good thing to know how to automate your table of content. And if you want to know that already, it's okay that you go watch my really long videos on YouTube. Otherwise, you could also simply just on YouTube type table of content InDesign, and you'll probably find an 8-minute long video made by some teenager. So you can also do that instead, you know. But I think that's it for today. And I think if you make your layout like this, I think you'll just be very happy in the long run, that you actually started using master pages to create a generic layout for your design guide. Okay, that being said, thank you very much for following out there. The one person who actually watches this video from the start till the end. It's gonna be a 2 hour and 15-minute long video. Thank you for watching. Yeah. Should we have like a cheer sound from you guys? Yay! Yay! Yay!